Now she's talking about she wants to do cheerleading and all that other stuff. Child, we'll see. But in the meantime, and in between time, my 10-year-old, she has adopted this love. She goes to a uh, arts and what is it called? Uh, she goes to an academy. She goes to private school, and it's where they do drama and music. And she has developed this love for the guitar. So she comes home every day. Oh, I can play hot cross buns. I could do this on the guitar. So I'm thinking about getting her a little guitar for Christmas. So she just turned 10 last weekend. So we had a lot going on, and I am tired. So, well, honey, such is life. And so, thank you guys again for tuning in. I came on um, while they're away at school today, so I can talk a little bit more freely and not run into bedtime because I've been staying up so late. Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome. Come on in. Thank you guys for joining us. Um, and so, we are streaming live from two of our Facebook pages. We are streaming live from Instagram, and we are streaming live from YouTube. Thank you all for tuning in. So, listen, this is again what's on your mind. It's where we discuss everything that most people won't discuss. For those of you that have not seen our advertisement, this is an innovative, cutting edge podcast or talk show, whichever you prefer, where we discuss the mind, the matters, and the myths about mental illness, about Christianity, about ministry, about relationships, about dating, about everything that pertains to daily life. Okay, if it's discussable, is that a word? My family say I make up words. If it's discussable, we'll discuss it. Okay, if it's a conversation piece, then we'll have the conversation about it. Right. All right. And so far, we have reached over, we began our podcast June 1st. And so far, we have reached over 3,000 people. And you guys say, well, where's those numbers? You guys that are on my personal page, you don't get the benefit of seeing those numbers. But you guys that tune in from my ministry page, you guys get to see the benefit of those numbers. And you guys that are tuning in from Instagram and YouTube, you guys don't get to see the benefit of those numbers until I post them and things of that nature that Facebook uses. You cannot manipulate the numbers, and everybody knows you can always manipulate any outcome by manipulating the variables. Not in this case. You cannot manipulate the outcome of the number of viewers. You cannot manipulate the number of people that you reach through social media because there is no way to manipulate the variables that are involved with how the algorithm work and how Facebook tallies up how many viewers you have and how many people you're reaching. Those numbers can't be manipulated. Outside of that, when you're doing specific research and things of that nature, it's very easy to change the outcome by manipulating the variables. Okay, but that's not the case here. So when I tell you that we have reached since June 1st, we have reached well over 3,000 people. Those are accurate numbers. Those are truthful numbers. Those are non-manipulated numbers. Again, because of the algorithms that Facebook uses, there is absolutely no way I personally can manipulate the numbers. And the numbers in this case do not lie because we cannot manipulate those numbers like we can if we were doing specific research. Then we could manipulate the outcome simply by manipulating the variables. All right. So again, we have reached over 3,000 people. And since I've started this, I started it in June with various topics. And since September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, I decided it was a really frightening decision that I made. I decided to make the decision to share my personal journey with depression and anxiety and dealing with suicide. That was the legs that this show actually stood on from its conception was that I wanted to, along with my therapist that I see once a month still. My next appointment is October, first week in October, October 2nd or October 4th, something like that. But the legs that the show stands on from conception was such that I wanted to create a platform to talk about mental illness in the Black community. I wanted a platform to freely talk about mental illness in the church, mental illness in the pulpit, mental illness in Christianity, mental illness in our Black communities, because for whatever reason, we don't talk about it as freely as we should. We don't talk about it as openly and as honestly. And most certainly, we don't talk about it as transparently as we should. And so, what happened was, I was going through therapy and dealing with depression and anxiety, after dealing with years of brain tumors and going through surgeries. And then my oldest daughter, she had been dealing with, good afternoon, Gerald, had been dealing with cancer. She was diagnosed with cancer at age 19. So she had battled cancer for 15 years and was in total remission. And then she gets married, and then less than a month later she's dead, and we still to this day don't have the real answers to what really killed her. I asked questions. No, cancer did not kill her. Then what in the world killed her? We don't know. All right, so all of that threw me into a tailspin, and I could not get it together. I couldn't snap back like I was used to. I could go through something. I went through a divorce after 20 years of marriage in ministry. Uh, it was a quiet divorce because we were away from family. We had left where we were from, and we were living in a whole nother state when we divorced. So a lot of people didn't even know for years and years and years that we were even divorced. And so in that sense, it was not a real ugly public divorce. But once people found out that you had two pastors who have been in ministry and pastored together for all of these years are no longer married. And so thank you, Tamika. Yeah, and I'm not afraid to openly share my story. Tamika is saying, for those of you that are watching on other streams, she's saying completely agrees, something that needs to be acknowledged in the Black community. She's making reference to mental illness and how we deal with things in the Black community, and how we are almost forced at times to keep secrets that hold us in bondage mentally, even as little children. So what happens is we grow up as adults that learn how to internalize just about everything we go through. And so that leads to mental illness, that leads to poor health, it leads to poor dieting, it leads to stress, it leads to all kinds of, these highs and lows that we go through, these ins and out. It just leads to all kinds of plethora of unhealthy habits that we get into when we are not taught that it's okay to talk, it's okay to have conversation. And so as a result of me not being able to get it together like I thought I was going to be able to get it together. Like I said, I had gone through a divorce, 20 years of marriage in ministry. I was not only first lady, but I was also the assistant pastor to my husband. I traveled preaching. I was doing women conferences. I'm an excellent teacher and workshop facilitator. I was doing workshops. I was doing leadership training workshops. I write leadership training manuals, you name it. If it's in the church, if it's in the Lord's house, I can do it just about. From cleaning the bathroom to even, I learned how to work the sound system, believe it or not. And I can keep a beat on the drum every now and then. Don't sleep on your girl. All right. Uh, and so after all of that, I was able to bounce back. When I was a kid, I was told Black people don't go through depression and they don't commit suicide. Well, guess what? We have known, now we know that's the biggest lie we have ever been told. I believe you. That's the biggest lie that we've ever been told, because it is more prevalent in the Black community than in anywhere else. I'm going to read you some statistics in a second. And so what happened was, I was always able to bounce back. I shared with you guys last week. Let me finish this and then I'll go over to that. And so I was always able to bounce back, but still I felt like, so I started not being able to get up in the morning. I would get up, take a bath, brush my teeth, put on some clothes, and then I found myself always getting back in bed. I'm just like, oh, I'm just so tired. Oh, I don't feel like going anywhere. Oh, I don't feel like talking to anybody. And it was okay for a little while, because I knew I had dealt with depression before while I was married, because it was not a happy marriage. Um, and one of the things I would not say publicly, that it was an abusive marriage, but it was. And people think uh, hitting you is the only form of abuse, but somebody always screaming in your face and calling you names and making you change how you see yourself, honey, that's abuse, and always threatening to do bodily harm to you, and taking stuff from you, and make it impossible for you to contact other people. It was just crazy, crazy stuff that I did not think preachers did, you know. And so, such is life. And so I was able to bounce back from all of that. But when all of this happened with my daughter, and I was really angry against the person she had married. Some of you might know him, and I don't care, you know. Um, so I was talking to my therapist. Well, first I went to my doctor because I didn't know what was wrong with me, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me, physically wrong. So she says, "Well, maybe you're dealing with depression." I was like, "No, I dealt with depression before. I know how that feels." Da 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 da. Well, long story tolerable, she sends me to a psychiatrist. And for my first time there, you know, I just broke down. Every time I would try to talk about it, I would just start crying. Every time I would mention my daughters, I would start crying. Every time I would mention she got married on March the 3rd, and on March 31st, she was pronounced dead, I would just break down crying, just like, how did that happen? Like, I still have so many questions. To this day, I still have a lot of questions with the no answers. And so one of the things I had to do was let go of anger, and just really start getting into the moment during my therapy sessions. And even that wasn't really effective. So then she put me on some medication to help me, and I wasn't sleeping. I would stay awake from one day to the next. It would be 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning before I could go to sleep, because I'd just be laying awake, like, what happened to my baby? What happened? So she gave me something to help me sleep. And so, and that was one of my biggest secrets, because I'm still a pastor. And I said to you guys last weekend, and while all of this is going on, here's the catch: I am the grief counselor at my church. In fact, I had been put over the grief counseling ministry at my church. And so I found myself in a position where I could no longer function, not just function as a pastor, but I couldn't function as a person. So I remember going to therapy one time, and this is what she said to me. She said, "You're not even living, you're existing." And and I remember telling her, "I don't know how to live without my daughter." I remember telling her that I don't know how to live without her. And she says, "Well, you have to find a way to live. You gotta find a way to fight. You gotta find a way to talk. You have to talk about it more than just coming to see me once or twice a month." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know." So it was a secret hanging over my head. And I would try to talk to, leaders, or people like that. And I would be like, "Listen, I need to talk to you." But um, I could never get that sit down moment so I could say, "Hey, this is what's going on with me. Hey, I need to take some time. I need some time. Hey, this is what's what." So it was always, just not afforded me the opportunity to have that sit down, that come to Jesus moment, if you will. And so um after a while I start thinking, like, I gotta I gotta get over, I gotta not get over it, but I gotta find a way to get my life back together. I just felt like I just wanted to fade to black. You know what I'm saying? I just kind of wanted to fade away. And because I'm still trying to process, how do I live without my daughter? And and so finally, I was talking to my therapist one day and I said, you know what? I said, I was thinking about, well, years ago, my brother and I had talked about me doing a show, and I was like, no, I'm not, you know, um, I was just coming out of my marriage. So I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. Because when you've been in a marriage for 20 years and a person have consistently ripped and torn your self-esteem to shreds, it's almost impossible. You have to really work at building yourself back up. You have to be intentional about building yourself back up. You have to be intentional about regaining your self esteem. You have to be intentional about regaining who you are as a person. You have to be intentional about that. And um, about 18 years ago or so, I was like, no, I can't do that. So then finally, fast forward to June when we first started the show, I was talking with my therapist and I said, I've been thinking about, I've been seeing a lot of pastors committing suicide. And I said, what if I start talking about my struggle with depression and anxiety and going through suicide attempts? And she said, you know what? She said, pastors have one of the highest rates of suicide attempts and depression and anxiety. And she said, uh, and the reason why it's so high, because they develop this God complex sometimes, because people are more prone to put us on pedestals, even without trying, because you can pray for somebody and God answers that prayer, or they can be sick and you can lay hands on them and their faith makes them whole, they'll get healed or whatever. And they actually think it's us doing the work versus, and some of us will let them think it's us versus pointing all of that praise, all of that reverence back to God. And so it is easy in some sense to develop this God kind of complex. And when we do that, that's where uh, the mental strain comes in between, um, is this me doing this? Is this God working through me? And then the other end of the spectrum on that is when you get done praying for all those people and you see God working in all those people, you see God performing miracles in all those people, then you, as the pastor or the preacher or the leader or whomever, whatever capacity you're operating in, then you got to go back home and you still got to deal with your own personal stuff. And so you're looking around thinking, okay, I just laid hands on all these people walked away talking about they're healed, but then you get home and there's nobody there to lay hands on you. There's nobody to give you a specific word. I said this, most words that we get as prophets and pastors and leaders, they're generic words. It's very seldom somebody will give us a specific word that will speak to a very specific thing or things that we're dealing with, that will make sense to us, that will make us, feel like we can grab hold and ride out a little bit longer. It's very seldom that happens. I know it is that way for me. And so I said to my therapist, I wanted, come forward with my story. And she says, I think that would be a good idea. So this was at the beginning of the year. So about 3 months went by and I had my appointment again. She said, so how's the show going? And I was like, I haven't started. She was like, why? She says, I told you you're ready. I think it would be good for you. I think you're going to help a lot of people. She said, then it goes in line with your with your studies as a psychologist and da 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 da. So I say, do you even think I could be a good psychologist with all this? I said, here you're telling me that I'm dealing with depression and anxiety, and I've been studying to be a psychologist, and how's that going to work? She says, oh, don't worry, you're going to do really good. So I said, well, okay. So another month goes by. She was like, how's the show going? I said, well, maybe I'll start next month. Now, 4 months has gone by that we've been talking about it. And I'm just like, no, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And then I start thinking, what are people going to think about me? How are my friends going to feel? I ran it by somebody and they was like, I wouldn't do that because it's going to be really hard for you to find somebody to date and all that kind of stuff. You're single now, da 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 da. I'm like, single now, child. I've been single since what, 2011, 2012. I'm not just single now. Girl, bye. And so I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go to God. I'm going to go to God and talk to my therapist. That's who I started talking to about it. And so I said, okay, so June 1st, I'm going to start. June 1st, it was what I did. That was my coming out party, if you will. And not the kind of coming out, people normally think of when I said my first show. I said, this is my coming out party. I'm coming out, but I had to explain not coming out, not like coming out the closet, but coming out of the shame of dealing with depression and anxiety, coming out of the stigma. That black people don't deal with depression, or that black people don't talk about depression, or if you're saved, you can't be dealing with depression, or if you got the Holy Ghost, you can't be dealing with depression, or if you are a pastor, you shouldn't tell people that you're dealing with depression because now people are not going to trust what you say, or if you're a prophet, you shouldn't come forward and tell people that. I've heard it all, but at the end of the day, the very people that'll tell you all of that are some of the people that are dealing with it themselves. Keep that in the back of your mind, okay? And so I said to my audience June 1st, I said, hi, I'm Benita, and this is what depression looks like. And I thought to myself, people can say, oh, you shouldn't claim that, or you shouldn't say that. I'm so over that whole name it and claim it, grab it and blab it era. That's nowhere in scripture. I child. I'm over people. And so what was important to me was to create a safe platform for me to share my story. And for particularly because I had kept seeing so many preachers committing suicide, and we're still seeing it. We just don't want to be honest and truthful about what we're seeing, because you don't want to talk about it until after somebody have done it. We don't want to be proactive. We like to come talk about stuff after we hear about it, after we hear about a scandal, after we hear about a suicide, after we hear about people going through a divorce, after we hear about people losing their church. We want to talk about it after the fact. Nobody wants to have a proactive conversation. Nobody wants to take a proactive stand, and say, hey, we got to start having the hard conversations. Why is it such a taboo subject in the Black community and in the Black church? As if it's not really happening, or as if it's not really relevant. And my God, there's so many elephants in the room. There's hardly any oxygen left for us to breathe. Whether we're in the church or the community, it's so much going on. And let me preface this by saying it's from the pulpit to the pew. It's more people in the pulpit that are dealing with depression that will probably ever admit it. They will not admit it. You know why? Because in the Black community, we have a notion that Jesus gonna fix it all. We have a notion that all we got to do is go to God in prayer and everything is going to be all right. I believe in prayer. Don't get me wrong. Remember, I tell you, I'm a brain tumor survivor. I believe in prayer. I believe in miracles, signs, and wonders because I am all of those things. However, I also believe we cannot negate our personal responsibilities for our self. We cannot negate our personal responsibility and just say Jesus gonna fix it. If you know you're struggling with something, go get some help. Talk to somebody. If you can't find nobody to talk to, I'm going to give you some phone numbers that you can find you somebody trustworthy that you can talk to. If you can't go to somebody in your church, if you can't talk to your pastor, your leader, your bishop, whomever, I'm going to give you some numbers that you can call, because just because people are pastoring, just because people have a title of pastor or bishop or apostle or prophet or whatever, it does not mean that they care about you. Some people won't even take the time to sit down and have a conversation with you, no matter how many times you say you need to talk. Trust me, I know about that. Anything else, they'll talk to you about. But when it comes to serious issues, people don't want to have serious issue conversation. They want to talk about a bunch of foolishness and stuff that don't really matter. Or they want to talk about stuff that only matters to their benefit. Okay? All right. So you're going to have to take responsibility for your health, particularly your mental health, uh, because in the Black community, again, we won't talk about it because, like Tamika said, you know, we were taught that we Black people don't deal with depression. Black people don't talk about that kind of stuff. Black people don't commit suicide, and y'all know that's a lie. We probably have the highest rate of undocumented, undiagnosed, untreated cases of mental illness. And the reason why so many Blacks go undiagnosed and untreated is because we don't take the time to go to the doctor. We'll know something's wrong with us, and we won't even uh, good afternoon, Jonathan. We will know something's wrong with us, and we won't even take the time to go to the doctor and find out what's actually uh, going on. That's what we do. That's what we do. And you know what happens with that? When we do, by the time, hold on, I'm trying to get live in the comments with you guys so I can see what you're saying. By the time, excuse me, we do decide to go and get help, we're feeling so bad that we won't tell anybody. We won't say anything because you know people make oh sorry, people make mental illness uh seem so bad. They make it seem demonic is the word that they use. Oh, that's a spirit. You know, if you're dealing with mental illness, that's a spirit, because again, in the Black church, we're taught that everything that does not look like God, then it must be some sort of evil spirit. It's some kind of demonic going on, you know. It's whatever it is, it's not of God. You know, if somebody's sad all the time, you know, that's a spirit. If somebody's dealing with any form of mental illness, that's a spirit. You know, we need to cast that spirit out. We need to cast the devil out. And I make this notation quite often, is that if somebody comes to us as leaders and saying, I think I'm dealing with depression, or actually been diagnosed with depression, and then what we do as leaders, well, lift your hands, we're going to pray that spirit off you. We're going to pray this demon of depression off of you. So what we have done now, we send people away with a compounded issue because they came to us with one issue about being depressed or feeling suicidal, but now we send them away with an added issue of thinking, oh man, now I got a spirit. I got to deal with this demon. I got a demon on me that I got to deal with. And so we have to be careful that if we are not knowledgeable enough on how to deal with people with mental illness, that we refer them out. Here's the problem. Most pastors, Black pastors, won't do that. Because again, the notion is Jesus gonna fix it. We can throw some oil, speak in tongues, turn around and clap 3 times, and all is gonna be well. No, it does not work like that. You can preach a sermon, it's time to leave Lodabar, get over it. You know, you can preach all of those sermons. None of that, let me tell you something, none of that is helpful when people are dealing with mental illness and depression or anxiety or thoughts of suicide. You can preach till the cows come home, honey, but until you encourage people to sit down and have a conversation and analyze what's going on with them, or even journal about what's going on with them, you will not get to the root of the problem. All you're going to do is you're going to have an exercise in futility. You're going to have people coming to church doing all of these exercises, jumping and running, screaming and shouting, jumping for joy, leaping for joy, turning, running around the church, clapping 3 times, sowing all these seeds, and still nothing. Some of that money you all can take and invest in bringing in a trained therapist, so that your people have the benefit of someone other than you with your Jesus gonna fix the whole message. Now, that might offend some of you preachers. It's okay to be offended. It's okay. It's okay. Sometimes offense is a choice. All right. All right. So I decided to um, tell my story. And then once I started telling my story during the month of June, June was Men's Health Month. I had men coming on telling their stories from drug addicts, men that had been in prison, men that had been in the military suffering from PTSD, men that had been molested as children. Uh, uh, it was just a mixture of different types of men that came on the show and absolutely transparently shared their stories the month of June. Well, it went so well, we extended it until the month of July. And so we had more men come on. We talked to a gentleman that was born with cerebral palsy. Um, uh, his mother had contracted uh, German measles while she was carrying him. He has a phenomenal story. It was amazing the response that I did get. And then we went into a different subject about dating. And then September comes around and it's National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And I could find nobody better to talk to you freely and openly and transparently about the subject better than I could. Because when it comes to depression, I have dealt with that. Comes to anxiety, I have dealt with that. And when it comes to suicide attempts, I have dealt with that, you know. And again, it was frightening at first because you don't really know how people are going to receive what you put out there. You don't know if it's going to grow or diminish your platform, if you will. You don't really know if it'll cause people to come to you, or or if it'll serve as a repellent of sort. You really don't know how people, you don't know who's going to watch, who's going to tune in, who's going to watch on the what is it called, the playback or the replay. You don't know any of that. So putting that kind of information out there, you're taking a chance, and you're taking a chance because you really don't know how it's going to be received. Well, I got over that fear and I thought more about uh, the young pastor, 30 years old, uh, who had just committed suicide a few weeks ago. Um, 30 years old, 30 years old, with 2 beautiful children. Um, the thing that really struck me and that kind of made me really want to forge ahead and tell my story even more was the fact that he was an advocate for suicide prevention and depression awareness. So he was on the trail. He was in the trenches. He was out there telling people, you know, uh, basically like suicide is not the answer. There's help for you. If you're dealing with depression or mental illness, there's help for you. He was out there in the trenches. And then he himself, it's like uh, it's like a fitness coach. Um, all of a sudden, I'm looking at things from a different perspective. Well, that's good. Um, it's like a fitness coach all of a sudden, um, just blowing up, just gaining all this weight and not caring. It's kind of the same scenario if you kind of think about it like that. Here's a man that was out there in the trenches. telling people there's a different way, there's a better way, don't take your life, things of that nature. And then um, he winds up taking his life. That was really sad and heartbreaking to me, um, to learn of that. But it made me even more determined to share my journey and to share my stories with you guys, and not so much worry about what people are going to think or what people are going to say, or who's going to draw near to me and who's going to draw back from me. I made 52 this year, so I think at this point, I'm just not. I don't have to have a lot of people around me. I don't have to be on every platform. I don't have to be, I don't have to preach everywhere. I've been in ministry since I was 14 years old. I've been pastoring since 1997, so I don't have to be everywhere all the time with everybody, and so for that, it just sets me free. It makes me free to tell my story at my own pace, in my own words, and in my own truth. Does that make sense to you? Again, it makes me free to tell my own story in my own words, at my own pace, and in my own truth. I am completely forthcoming. And so, uh, what happened was, um, that was a really big secret I felt like the enemy had over my head. And so once I started talking about it, the more I would talk about it, the better I started sleeping. The more I would talk about it, the easier my days got, because now I'm no longer carrying um, this secret around with me that here I am, I'm a pastor, been in ministry all these years, I'm a lover of people, you know, uh, I think I'm a little bit smart. I think I got a little bit of intelligence, and here I am with all of this going on, but yet I'm dealing with depression, I'm dealing with anxiety, and I have uh, at times, meaning more than one, uh, tried to commit suicide because I thought that was the only way out at that time. But I've learned better, and I've learned better coping skills, better coping mechanisms as I'm not as I matured in life and as I learned it's okay to talk. Everything doesn't have to be a secret. The more I stay in therapy, the more I realize why things happen this way, how they happen, and then how to avoid certain things from happening uh, that way again, if you will. And so um, Jonathan, what are you talking? I'm looking at things from a different. Okay. Um, and so I'm learning how to, you know, process what I feel. I'm learning how to guard my heart and my spirit. I'm learning how to get up every morning and draw the shades, let the light in. I'm learning how not to be afraid to be in crowds of people. So in other words, I had to learn between having. Oh, good afternoon. Uh, Oh, hey, Bernie. Hey, welcome. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. Good afternoon. Um, and so I had to learn what I consider my new normal, between dealing with the brain tumors and dealing with my daughter's death and all of that kind of stuff. And, now dealing with depression, I had to learn a new normal, and I had to be okay with saying not so much that this is what I'm claiming or this is that and the third, but this is my reality. This is what it is. This is what I'm dealing with. This is the battles that I have to fight. People say, well, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't claim this. Honey, ain't nobody claiming nothing. It just is what it is. And I think that's where we kind of uh, get in trouble, if you will, in the black church because we want to act like stuff is not happening. So we'll say, well, don't claim that, almost like out of sight, out of mind kind of deal. But that's not reality. We force people to live. I call them in these fantasy worlds in the church because what we'll tell somebody is, if you don't claim it, or if you don't name it, then it's not really there. And that's so far from the truth. I've seen people die early because they were saying, oh, I'm not sick anymore. And they get up and they start doing things before time, or they stop taking medications because they claiming it and naming it. And then the next thing we know, I seen it really, one of my best friends go through that. And I'm just like, girl, you need to sit down. She was like, no, they say, who said you healed? Who said you was healed? Did your doctor tell you you was healed? And I'm just like, some stuff we really got to be a little bit more wise about. We got to be a little bit more uh, realistic and a little bit more conscious about what we say, because even if your faith is not at a certain level, now it does take faith for miracle signs and wonders, but it also takes lifestyle. It also takes you being using wisdom. It's just not wise if you just had a kidney replaced, or a heart transplant, one of your vital organs, transplanted or something like that. You should not be up trying to get back to your normal routine in church and shouting and carrying on. You shouldn't be doing that. That's just not wise. And but what we do in the black church, and you guys know I'm telling the truth, and you can debate it till the cows come home, but here's the truth. What we'll tell people, God done healed you. Look what the Lord done. He done healed you. Get up and praise him. You owe God a praise. You can't just sit there and then, we're forcing people to get up and be shouting and jumping around after major surgery and all of that. And then when those people have setbacks or they die prematurely because they're not healed, then we was like, oh, I guess it was their time. God don't make no mistakes. I could just choke people, sometimes in church for just saying just stuff, that has no scriptural backing to it. And to be honest, it doesn't register on the wisdom spectrum to me. It has no wisdom to it at all. And it took me a while to get to this point. It took me going through everything I've been through to get to this point to say that we have got to do better in the black church. Some stuff we've been taught, listen, we need to get an eraser and just go down and erase some of that stuff and then put in the right information. When people go through surgery, tell them to stay home. Tell them to take their 6 weeks. Tell them to take their 8 weeks. Let's stop telling people, oh, hurry up and come on back to church. Hurry up and get on back in here. We need you. And it's like, I just can't wrap my head around how we do things, in our culture, and I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take for us to change and start making it okay to have these conversations. Like Tamika said earlier, growing up, she heard that Black people don't deal with depression. Black people don't talk about depression. And we know that is not the case. We know that is not wisdom talking, because indeed, Black people do deal with depression. Black people do struggle with suicidal thoughts. Black people do have PTSD. Black people do go through a plethora of mental illnesses that we refuse to address. And again, we won't address it until something happened. We won't address it until there's a scandal. We won't address it until somebody actually commits suicide. We won't address it until people's home are broken up and torn apart. Then we're not still don't address it. What we're doing, we're gossiping about it, but we're still not addressing the issue. I was one of the guys that I interviewed on my show, that he was sharing his story about how he had been diagnosed with PTSD. He's a veteran, and he was telling me he didn't even know that he was diagnosed with PTSD. He just knew he was having these mood swings and things of that nature. He's a black guy. He was having these mood swings and things of that nature. He said he knew something about him was different, but he couldn't put his finger on it. And so every time he would go for his physical and his checkups, no one would ever say anything about it. That's real talk to the man. They sit still. Yeah, Dre. Hey, Dre, welcome. That's Dre Coop, y'all. Number one gospel show in all of San Antonio. Welcome, Dre. And so, what happened was, he said one day he went in for a visit, and his file was sitting on the desk. And the nurse came in. She was like, "Hey, did you get a call?" He was like, "No, I'm just here for a regular checkup." She says, "Well, nobody called you and told you?" He was like, "Told me what? What's going on?" So he said he opened the file, and there it is, a diagnosis of PTSD a year ago. So that's how he found out. He found out that the doctor had diagnosed him with PTSD a whole year before he found out. How he found out? By looking through his file that was sitting on the desk, because the nurse asked him, "Did anybody?" "Oh, they must have called you in." He was like, "No, I'm just here for a regular checkup." She was like, "Oh, no one called you about your diagnosis?" So he just happened to see his file. He flipped it open, and there was his diagnosis. So my question: how come nobody called him? Why was it okay to let him walk around for a whole year knowing he had been diagnosed with PTSD and nobody told him? So my question was, did that make you feel better? He said, yeah, it made me feel better knowing, being able to put a name to what I was feeling, because he says that was not him. Those mood swings, that high and low, quick temperedness, that he knew that was not him. And so it is pretty relevant in the Black communities, that we have these conversations, and listen, you got to get over what people gonna think. You got to get over what people are gonna say, because it's those same people that have so much to say about you that need help themselves. In the words of my 16-year-old, period. It's them same people that are talking about you, that are making fun of people that have to go see a therapist. I don't know why, but church folks always run to the therapist. The Bible say, bring all your cares to the Lord, cast all your cares on the Lord, for he cares for us. They want to find a scripture to fit everything until it hits them, their house, their loved ones, their situation, their church, and then they want another solution other than all those scriptures they've been throwing at other people. It's important to understand it's okay that we believe in the Bible. Trust me. I listen, I'm a believer all day through any situations. However, everything I have gone through have not only taught me how to be more of a believer, but it also has taught me to be proactive about my own health, how to be do research every time. If they give me a diagnosis, when they told me the two different types of brain tumors I had, the first thing I did was came home and did the research. I will do research. Let me tell you something, because although life is in the word, all of life is not in the word. Let me say it like that before you all pick up stones. All of life is not in the word. You cannot, go to the Bible and find what you need to do to get yourself better. That's why God gave doctors knowledge to help you get better, to help you understand. And I know different people have different perspective and different understanding of different things. You see things differently. Listen, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm not looking uh for a debate. I'm looking for a discussion, and I'm looking for a discussion that makes it okay for people to talk. And a lot of times the reason why people don't come forward about dealing with depression and about dealing Is my light okay? See, here we go. About dealing with depression and about dealing with anxiety or suicide attempts is because we're just unkind, particularly in the Black church. We're unkind to one another. I'm sorry to tell y'all, we are so unkind to one another. We would talk about child. She said she was dealing with depression. I knew something was wrong with her. I just thought she was always acting funny and being uppity. I just thought she was trying to be a such a much. I thought she was bougie. I thought she was that. You know how y'all do. Y'all will drag somebody through the mud and don't even know that the mud done dried up, child, please. Or I knew something was wrong with him. He acted a little throwed off. He acted like he was too good to speak to people. You don't ever know what people are dealing with on a daily basis. It is. Who's that? Is that my godson? Depression is real these days. Yep, I think that's my godson. And he's right. Depression is very real these days. Uh, do you guys remember a couple of months ago the 10-year-old Black boy killed himself because he was being bullied at school? And so for us to say, let's not have these kind of conversation, it's for us to say, let's keep our head in the sand. Let's let our preachers keep killing themselves. Let's let our Black men keep killing themselves. Let's let our women keep running around, dealing with mental illness with no help, no medication, no one to go talk to. Let's just let it run rampant in our culture. And let's not say anything about it. Let's let it run rampant in our church. And we'll just act like it's a spirit. We'll call it a demon when in fact the problem I have with the church labeling everything as demonic is this: the stuff we call demonic most of the time is not demonic, but the stuff we tolerate and the stuff we cover, that stuff is more than likely demonic and sinful, but we're quick to call that something else. And so we're quick to label stuff. We're quick to label people without having the intelligentsia that requires to make proper assessments. And I have said this over and over and over. If you are a leader in any capacity, just go take a psychology course. They have 4-hour courses you can go take. Take an online course. You don't have to try to get a degree in it because trust me, it's hard. However, go take a class, take a leadership training class, take a class in human behavior, take a class in something that lets you understand behavior, personality traits, tactics, and the wherewithal that people operate in. Take a course so you can understand what goes on with people other than getting your and calling everything a demon, because here's what y'all gonna do. Some of you are gonna wind up finding yourself in some court situations because you have no knowledge of how to deal with people that are dealing with mental illness. We don't like to call it mental illness because it just sounds really ugly, honey, but it is what it is, and that is not what mental illness is. Let me tell y'all something. Let me tell you what mental illness is. And let me give you some symptoms. Mental illness can be depression. Mental illness can be anxiety. Mental illness can be PTSD. Mental illness can be stress. Mental illness can be cluster headaches. Mental illness can be fibromyalgia. Mental illness can be stroke territory. It's a plethora of things that falls under the category of mental illness. Instagram, you guys are going to get cut off in about 8 seconds. Come right back. I'll bring you right back on, okay? All right, thank you. So mental illness has more than just one vein that it operates under. Hold on, let me get them right back. They normally do so good to come right back in. Go live. Okay, I got him back. And so there's so many other things that mental illness is, and is one thing in particular that mental illness is not, and that's demonic. Mental illness is not demonic, and mental illness is not sinful. Mental illness is not the cause of sin. Mental illness is not a spirit. All right. And so, because we won't take the time to educate ourselves, we just call it what we know to call it. And I'm not bashing anybody, but my heart is just simply, uh, it becomes more personal when you go through the thing. Like I said, uh, uh, we can say what we want to say, but when it hits our house or our loved ones or us in particular, then we see it in a different light. Okay. So, uh, I'm going to talk about depression a little bit, and I'm going to give you some signs that you can look for. Depression, what it really is a mood disorder. It causes persistent feelings of sadness and loss of interest. It also called major depressive disorder or clinical depression. That's what I was diagnosed with. I was diagnosed with clinical depression. Okay, so here's what happens with that. It affects how you feel, think, and behave, and can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. I would have, between having the brain tumor and dealing with depression, I would have the most awful migraines. I'm talking about debilitating migraines that I couldn't get out of bed for days. I would have to wear shades inside the house. I couldn't drive because my sight would diminish. It would be horrible. All right. And so, pardon me, says you may have trouble doing normal day to day activities, and sometimes you may feel as if here we are, life is not worth living. Sometimes your body your between your body and your mind, they can get in such a battle for control. You literally and you physically feel the battle within. So your mind is telling you one thing and your body's trying to do something different. So what depression and anxiety does, it's like your mind and your body is having this internal uh, 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 battle. But on the external, you look normal. You look like this. Your hair, I keeps my hair fly, whether it's a wig or weave or, I hardly ever wear my own hair because it's down here and I don't know how to style it. So such is life. But I'm gonna look good. Trust and believe that. Even if I'm not feeling good, I'm gonna look good. All right. I try to eat right and exercise. So, the battles that I faced before, I no longer have to fight those battles. You know what I'm saying? And I enjoy um, what I see when I do what I'm supposed to do. All right. So, a lot of times, it just makes life feel like it's not worth living. And again, uh, me coming forward saying, okay, I've been diagnosed with clinical depression. Thank you for coming back, Instagram. You guys come on back in. Welcome back. I do apologize that you guys were cut off. Um, and so I was so concerned. I was so worried. I was so afraid. But what happened was, I don't know what happened. I was tired of being with the secrecy of being diagnosed with clinical depression. I was just tired. I was tired of worrying about those that did know. I was worrying about if they ever got mad at me, would they tell somebody? Y'all know how church folks do and black folks do. Folks get all your secrets, they get close to you, find out everything about you. And then as soon as you make them mad about whatever, or you disagree with them about something, or you stop being the person that they thought you supposed to be to them, they lay all your stuff bare. They just put it all out on Front Street. And I was so afraid about those that knew my secret. I was worried about would they put it out there, would they tell it? So you know what? And that alone, oh my God, that's a weight all by itself. When you constantly live in fear about what somebody will or won't tell, it's like robbing a bank and only person know you robbed the bank are the people that help you rob the bank. So you feel like, what's the money going? Are they gonna tell? So you live with that secret, you live with that thing hanging over you like forever until you get to the point, you be like, bump you, bump all of y'all. I need to be free, because it's compounding the pressure that I'm already under. I'm already dealing with, all of the external stuff. Now I'm dealing with this internal battle. And let me put a pin here. I remember someone told me, well, I wouldn't put that out there because they were talking about how it would make it almost impossible for somebody to want to date me if I put all of that out there. I was like, child, here's my thing about that. Here's my thing about that. Church folks, spread your business like spreading jam and peanut butter on bread. For real, for real. Honey, if you only knew how true that was. And they'd be the first ones say, oh, I've been praying for you. You's a lie. You ain't been praying for me. Because they told me you was the one talking. And by the way, you was the only other person there with me. You was the only person that saw me there. So I knew I had to be you, but you the one time I've been praying for you. Child, we just sort of start putting people in their place and be like, let me stop you right there. Let me stop you before you tell a whole lie. You already done started out with a hat. You at 1/4 of a lie. Let me stop you before you get to a whole lie. And then, that's going to really set us apart because I ain't finna deal with you telling me a whole lie all the time. So, good point, godson. And so here's what happened. So they was like, well, you shouldn't put that out there, because it'll be hard, for you to find somebody to date. First of all, I'm not looking for anybody to date, you know, that's first of all. Second of all, in my Jay-Z voice, if I had 99 problems, that wouldn't be one of them. Uh, Third of all, uh, if I am interested in someone, it would have to be someone who looks beyond the external and have the strength enough to deal with not only my external but also my internal. You can't have the external without getting to the internal. You got to want all of me. I can't divide myself in half. One thing I don't have is split personalities. Let's get that clear. I can't divide myself in half and give you only the external and I keep the internal. You either gonna take it all or you won't get none. Hello, somebody. All right. So we don't have to deal with that anymore. All right. So that was another thing I had to get free. I had to get free about people telling me, don't say this or you shouldn't say that or this is gonna happen or that's not gonna happen for you or this, that, and the third. I'm just like, child, hush. So sometimes you got to stop talking to people and find you a good therapist to talk to. All right. So clinical depression, again, it affects how you feel, think, and behave. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. You may have trouble doing normal day-to-day activities. And remember, here's what I want to talk about. It sometimes will make you feel as if life is not worth living. And that's the point I had gotten to because of the things I had gone through, divorces and all of that kind of stuff. Like, wait a minute, God. And people were saying crazy stuff, like, oh, you prophet, you didn't see that happening. You didn't see that coming. God didn't show you that. Now, this was coming from preachers and bishops talking to me crazy and crosswise. I'm just like, what you just said, instead of saying, I'm here, I'm praying for you. Do you need anything? Folk was coming at me slick at the mouth like, oh, God didn't show you that was about to happen. You should have known that was going to happen. Or you didn't see that. You're a praying woman. God didn't show you that while you was praying, stuff like that. This is how Black folks deal with each other. Shameful. Shame on y'all. All right. So it's more than just about the blues. Depression isn't a weakness. Listen to this. It's not a weakness. You can't just simply snap out of it. It's not something you just tell people, get over it. I hear a lot of preachers saying, oh, just get over it. Let it go. That's all well and good until it hits you. And then you're not so quick to let it go. You're not so quickly to get over it. It makes a good message and it's good preaching, but it's not reality. All right. telling people to let it go, move on, get over it, snap out of it. It's, again, it makes good preaching. You'll get a good holler and you'll get the crowd excited, but it's not reality. Those people will jump and scream and shout and holler and leave right out of there and go back and sink back into that dark place. Trust me on that one. And so, although depression may occur only once during your life, people typically will have multiple episodes. So, during these episodes, symptoms occur most of the day, nearly every day, and may include, here are some symptoms you can look for: feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, hopelessness, angry outbursts, irritability or frustration, even over the smallest of matters, loss of interest or pleasure in most of or all normal activities, such as sex or your hobbies or sports. And you know what? I broke a major made a major breakthrough Friday night because I had gotten to the point where crowds kind of made me jittery. Friday night when I went to the high school football game, and I actually sat on the sidelines. I actually had a chance to walk across the field during halftime with the band there, and so I had a major breakthrough about being in crowds and being around a bunch of children at one time. Major breakthrough. If you really trying to get a major breakthrough, just do something you haven't done or do something you've been afraid to do. I was afraid to be around large crowds of people, and that was because of a stalking incident from a bishop that I had never met. He had saw me on Facebook, and it was crazy. It was crazy. Never met the man a day in my life, you know. Um, but it put me in a fearful state. And so I had a major breakthrough. Uh, I was able to go to the game. And the only reason I left early was because my 16-year-old, she sent me home. She was like, all right, y'all can leave now. Halftime over, homecoming show over. You can go home now. I was like, honey, I've been put out of better places by better people. So I came on home, and sleep disturbance. Remember, I told you I couldn't sleep, including insomnia or sleeping too much. Now, I still don't have a problem with sleeping too much. I still sometimes have a problem with insomnia. So I do take something to help me sleep every now and then. Tiredness or lack of energy. So even the small task would take extra effort. Uh, Reduce appetite and weight loss, or increase craving for food and weight gain. So every time I would go to see my therapist, she would be like, are you eating? I'm like, yeah, I'm eating. I'm like, why? She was like, every time I see you, you're getting smaller and smaller. Well, I was actively trying to lose weight, not really because of depression or anything, but I was actively trying to lose weight. Most of you know I do vegan and vegetarian. Um, and then I work out occasionally, and so, but that has helped me manage my weight. Whereas one of the types of brain tumors I had was causing fluid to remain not just on my body, but also on my brain. And so I was almost like 300 pounds, just fluid. One day I might show y'all a picture, before a picture, and then you can see an after picture. But so I had to have surgery um, to help the fluid to, they wanted to shake this part of my head and put a shunt in, and the shunt would come through here, drain down, and have the fluids drain down in my stomach and come out in the wash. So, but then they gave me a different option of a different kind of surgery. So I took the second option. And what that surgery did, it not only did it release all the pressure and the fluids off my brain, and it released the fluids and pressure off my body. So that caused me to be able to lose weight almost immediately. And it's been 2 years now So I've had to do the work to keep the weight off, and so that's why I really went, vegan, more vegan. Sometimes I was already doing vegetarian, but I really want to maintain my weight loss, because I was, like I said, I was almost 300 pounds. Now I fluctuate between 175 and 179. I fluctuate right between there. So, and I still want to get down a little bit lower. But uh, so every time I would go, she would be like, "Are you eating? You're getting smaller and smaller." So I had explained to her that I was trying to actively lose weight. It wasn't because of the depression that I was losing weight. So she was like, "Okay, then, okay." So anxiety, agitation, restlessness, slow thinking, speaking or body movement, feeling of worthlessness or guilt, fixating on past failures or self blame, uh, trouble thinking and concentrating, making decisions and remembering things. That's one of the things I would not do. I wouldn't make any major decisions, or anything while I was going through all of this. And I still don't make any major decision, except for those things that pertain to business. And then I don't jump right in. I have to kind of mull it over a little bit, pray about it, think about it, and then I decide what's best, not just for me, but for everybody that's involved. Frequent and recurrent thoughts of death. Um, Now, that part really got to me because of the way my daughter died. For a long time after she died, I wouldn't go to sleep because I was afraid I wasn't going to wake up. You know, that's just my reality. Um, that plagued me for months and months and months. Now, it's only been March 31st made a year that she's been dead, but that thing plagued me for almost that long. Um, that I went to sleep, I was not going to wake up because she died like within a 12-hour span of time. And I know I mention this frequently, and that's just par for the course. It's what I'm dealing with. So naturally, I'm going to mention what I'm dealing with. And if you're tired of hearing it, I encourage you, don't tune in while I'm talking about these particular types of subjects, okay? Because I'm not going to be silent about something that I know other people are dealing with. I'm not going to be silent about something I know that I have been assigned to talk about. So if you're tired of hearing the story, you know, it's okay. You can log out, you know. Um, so, but anyhow, so I was afraid to go to sleep for a long time because I wasn't sure, because when I got to the hospital, she was awake, she was talking, she was alert. Day before she was up walking around, we was laughing, talking. And then the next day, you know, I get there, she's sitting up talking, and 12 hours later, they said, well, we're going to we're going to put her to sleep. And then we're going to wake her up in 3 days. I was like, okay, 2 to 3 days, we're going to wake her up just so we can get ahead of whatever this is trying to take over her body. I was like, okay. So I was like, is it the cancer? No, it's not the cancer. What is it? We don't know yet. So that's why we're going to put her in a coma, induced coma, so we can figure out what's going on with her. Well, once they put her in a coma, she did. 12 hours later, she was dead. So they never had to wake her up, holding her hand when she flatlined. The one thing I do say that God did give me grace about was I was the first one to see her come in the world. I was the first one to hear her breathe. I was to take her first breath, say her first word. The grace is that I was also the last one to see her. I was the last face she saw before she closed her eyes. My voice was the last voice she heard. My touch was the last touch she felt. Um, and I was the last one to hear her breathe her last breath. So that is the grace that I think that the Lord gave me as a mother who had a child at 16, very young. And we grew up together. That's what I tell everybody. We grew up together. We raised each other. you know. And so that is the grace that I hold on to, that sometimes that grace has to wash over um, my sadness in missing her. I'm not ashamed to say I still miss her. I still have my days of sadness. I still have my days I'm not I'm not at my best, you know, but the grace that God allowed me to be the first one to see her breathe her first breath, and then be the last one to see her take her last breath. That is the grace. Hold on a second. Let me plug this thing up. Okay. I was about to lose you, YouTube. I forgot to plug up my laptop. But that is the grace that that God has afforded me. And that's the grace that I always hold on to when I think about my daughter and when I'm missing her. I think about that grace. And so sometimes, when she first died, I did have frequent or reoccurring thoughts of, well, am I going to die like that? What's going to happen to me? You know, um, I don't know if I had suicidal thoughts during that time or not. I can't really say, but I do know I wanted to be with her. Let me just say that like that. So it'll also cause you to have suicide attempts or suicide. Now, I shared with you guys that I had attempted suicide about 3 times in my life. And that third time um, almost worked. But God had other plans for me. And looking back in retrospect, I am certainly glad He did. Certainly glad He intervened. At that time, I didn't want Him to intervene, but uh, according to His will, He stepped in. Uh, in fact, one of the other things that the enemy had held over me for so long that was causing me to have such a heaviness and causing me to be so depressed was after I got divorced. I say single about 4 or 5 years. Then I finally, uh, to me, I didn't want to get married to this guy, but I wind up getting married to him. If you go back and watch last week's show, you'll find out why. Um, so I wind up getting married again. That only lasted 18 months. That was a huge secret I didn't want anybody to know. Huge secret. Because here I am, I'm a pastor, I'm a prophet, I'm a businesswoman. People know me to be an intelligent woman, a wise woman, you know, all of these things. You know, uh, I've been to college, graduated, all this stuff. And here I am going through another divorce, and I'm just like, oh my God. I remember trying to join this team of preachers that were doing some work that I wanted to be involved with. Um, but when they interviewed me, um, one of the things he says, well, I've heard that you've been divorced twice. And I said, yeah. He was like, well, um, basically he was saying, well, we really can't use you in the area that you want to work in because you've been divorced. And I said, okay, so, but you want someone to talk to people that's either going through divorce or have been through divorce. You want someone to talk to people about how to live after divorce or live through a divorce. Yes. But you don't want somebody that's been divorced to do that. No. So make this make sense to me. So someone who's never been through divorce, how then uh, are they going to tell somebody how to live through it or how to make it after divorce or that there is hope, there is joy, there is peace, there's love, there's laughter, after divorce, or teach them how to go through it without being bitter, teach them how to go through it without using the children as pawns, you know. And so he was like, well, he couldn't really give me no real answer. So I was just like, you know what? Okay, fine. He's like, well, we have enough. No, 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 thank you. I'm good. You know, well, you came highly recommended. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But, such is life. And I'm just like, so for that reason, I wouldn't tell anybody, but now, I'm so free. You know what I'm saying? It's so freeing when people don't have anything they could just hang over your head. You know what I'm saying? You can't, it's just freeing. And so sometimes, um, that was one of the times that was my last time trying to commit suicide after I had gone through a second divorce, and people was like, they was just cruel people. And it wasn't people in the world, it was the church people that was the cruelest, saying the most reckless things to me. I was just like, oh, y'all reckless, you know. So naturally I felt like I didn't have any other hope, and my head was hurting, my heart was hurting, my body was hurting, my soul was hurting. So I was just taking all these pills, just trying to stop myself from hurting. And before long, it was like I was out of my body watching them trying to resuscitate me. It was, I could hear, but I couldn't respond, you know. And I remember them saying, well, she's non-responsive. I could remember that. And then it was like I went into this deep, 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 deep sleep. And when I woke up, I was in the hospital. And I was mad when I realized I was still here. I was angry with God for a long time. I was like, now I got to live with the shame of being divorced twice, and I'm still a preacher. I got to live with the shame of what people are going to say about me. I got to live with the shame of, being depressed. I got to live with the shame of people asking me, well, what happened? I got to live with the shame of people saying, oh, if y'all both in Christ, then you ought to be able to make your marriage work. People saying some absolutely reckless stuff to me, and at the time I didn't have the fortitude, to hit back. Some people were hitting, these are preachers now. Preachers was hitting below the belt, and at the time I didn't have the fortitude to fight back. I would just say, I can't fight you. That's what you say, that's what you say, that's what it is. And so it got to the point where everything would hurt me all the time. But every time I would go to the doctor, they couldn't find anything wrong with me. So one of the other things that depression will do, it'll make you have unexplained physical problems, such as back pain or headaches, and I would have the most excruciating headaches, with no explanation to them. And here's what here's what it says: for many people with depression, symptoms usually are severe enough to cause noticeable problems in day-to-day activities such as work, school, social activities, or relationships with others. Some people may feel generally miserable or unhappy without really even knowing why. And that's what I was. I was just like, I didn't want to be around people. I would make up excuses, why I can't come certain places. But the reality of it is not that I didn't want to go. A lot of times I couldn't get it together enough to go. I couldn't, get my happy up enough to go. And so a lot of times, I've heard, people say they didn't know I heard them, but I've heard ministers walk by and say, oh, she acting different now. People saying crazy stuff. Oh, she acting different since she done lost all that weight. They was just saying crazy stuff. I could hear them, but one of the things that happened with one of the types of brain tumors I had, it took away my peripheral, both sides completely took it away. So if you came up on this side of me, I couldn't see you. The only way I could really see you, you had to come face to face with me. So a lot of time people be talking, they be like, "You didn't hear what I said, or you didn't see me. I was waving at you, and you didn't even pay me no attention." And I'm just like, and that's how I would hear, because if you lose your sight, then your hearing becomes more keen. So I would hear people say stuff, but I couldn't see them. And so my daughter and we was laughing one time, and she was like, she said, "Mama, you don't be seeing how they be rolling their eyes and looking at you side eye." I'd be like, "Nope." Nope, not unless they cover my face and do it, because if you standing up to the side of me and you rolling your eyes and you side eye me because I don't see you, and you talking trash and stuff, with your eyes and with your body and your head, honey, I don't even see you, so you can do all that all you want to. I can only hear you if you come face to face with me, or if you say it, then I can hear you. Or if you call my name, then I can turn to wherever your voice comes from. But that was one of the things, one of the types of brain tumors would do. It took away my peripheral completely. I lost my driving privileges for about 3 years. And then it started taking away my frontal vision. I just started back driving last year. Uh, the beginning of last year, I just started back driving, and so my daughter would be like, "Mama, you be laughing at people, you be smiling with people, just standing there talking to people, they be rolling their eyes at you and stuff." She was like, "I can't do all that." I'd be like, "Girl, I don't be seeing what people be doing unless they standing face to face to me. I can't see all that stuff y'all be doing, people be doing, rolling their eyes at me, looking me up and down. I can't see all of that. So, I, it don't bother me, So I learned to develop um, tough skin, if you will. You know, uh, I learned to develop tough skin because I knew internally I had more things to deal with than what was going on externally. Does that make sense to you? I'll say it again. I learned to just pay more attention to what was going on with me internally because I knew it was more than what was just going on around me externally. And so what people were saying and doing, some of the stuff I wouldn't even know because, like I said, I couldn't see them, But when I would hear them, you know, sometimes I would say, "Oh, you needed something," If I would hear them say certain things, I would stop and say, "You needed something." They'd be like, "Oh, Pastor Benita, oh no, we was just saying." Yes, you were just saying what, dear? You know, and so people are just people, you know. And so, let me tell you what to look for if you have children or teenagers dealing with depression. Common signs and symptoms of depression in children and teenagers are similar to those that are in adults, but they can have some variations or some uh, differences. Okay. Uh, yeah, hold on a second. YouTube, you guys still good? Okay. Um, so in younger children, symptoms of depression may include sadness, irritability, clinginess, worry, aches and pains, refusing to go to school, or being underweight. In teens, symptoms may include sadness, irritability, um, feeling negative and worthless, anger, poor performance, or poor attendance at school, feeling misunderstood or extremely sensitive, using recreational drugs or alcohol, eating or sleeping too much, self harm, cutting and stuff like that, loss of interest in normal activities, and avoidance of social interaction. Now, if you have senior citizens, um, depression and symptoms in senior citizens or older adults, depression is not a normal part of growing old, and it should never be taken lightly. Unfortunately, depression often goes, listen to this, undiagnosed and untreated in older adults, and they may feel reluctant to seek help. So, symptoms of depression may be different or less obvious in older people or in our senior citizens, such as memory difficulties, personality changes, physical aches and pains. Because what we'll do, we'll be more prone to think, oh, it's just signs of growing age, growing old. So you got to look for variations and know the difference. Okay, fatigue, loss of appetite, sleep problems, or loss of interest in sex, not caused by medical condition or the medication. You know, certain medications will bother with the libido, particularly in men, you know, some in women, but more specifically in men. So you have to be careful that if you are a man, if you're married to a man, dating a man, he's on certain medications, it's going to affect his sex drive or his ability to have, you know, have an erection and all of that kind of stuff. So you want to, and that could lead to him being depressed. It could lead to, you know, different emotional problems, that it could lead to him being angry a lot and irritable a lot. So you just have to kind of watch that. So they often wanted to stay at home rather than going out to socialize or doing new things. They also will have suicidal thinking or feelings, especially in older men. Okay, this is research from the Mayo Clinic. Okay, this is, remember, one of the things I always say to you, it is my responsibility to make sure that I bring you um, relevant information from reliable sources. Okay, this information is from the Mayo Clinic. All right. So it says when to see a doctor. When if you feel depressed, make an appointment to see your doctor or mental health professional as soon as you can. You know, don't sit around and wait because you're afraid of what somebody's gonna think, or you know, you're afraid of what somebody's gonna say, or you're afraid if somebody's gonna find out. Because here's the thing, even if they do find out, I mean, like, what can they do other than tell somebody? Like, I mean, you just have to get over people. You know, you have to get over your fear of people. You have to get over the fear of somebody finding out. You have to get over the secrecy and the shame of dealing with mental illness, you know, because that's what we were taught in the Black community. We were taught a lot of stuff to just be secret and shameful about it. There's nothing secret or shameful about dealing with mental illness. Is, you know, more people are dealing with it than will probably ever admit it. Okay. So, if you're reluctant to seek treatment, talk to a friend or a loved one or any healthcare professional, a faith leader, or someone else you trust. Now, if you talk to a faith leader, make sure if they start that, well, that's a spirit, make sure you go and get away from them real quick. Make sure you got to protect your mental health. All right. So, if you think you may hurt yourself or attempt suicide, call 911 or your local emergency number immediately. All right. So here are some numbers that you need. Um, what time is it? I got a few more minutes. Let me give you some causes. So it is not known exactly what causes depression, as many mental disorders, a variety of factors may be involved. Number one, biological differences. People with depression appear to have physical changes in their brains. Mental illness is not a spirit. Okay. The significance of these changes is still uncertain, but may eventually help pinpoint the causes. Again, one of the causes of depression is biological differences. Depression is not a spirit within itself. You know, mental illness is not a spirit, you know, but in the Black church, child, everything is a spirit. All right. Everything that we are not knowledgeable, everything that we don't really have relevant information about, we'll label it a spirit. You know, my challenge to you, those of you that are any form of leadership, my challenge to you is educate yourself. Okay, that's my challenge to you. Educate yourself on what mental illness is. Educate yourself on what it is not. Educate yourself on behavior. Educate yourself on personality traits. Educate yourself on biology. Educate yourself on how the brain works. Educate yourself on the endocrine system. Here's what I found out, because the other type of brain tumor I had was uh, uh, based on my endocrine system being totally, my numbers were supposed to be like a 12. Okay. My numbers was almost 50. That's how high my endocrine numbers were reading. So the type of one of the other types of brain tumors that I had, it was causing my endocrine system to be totally whacked. Well, what does your endocrine system does? Your endocrine system, it controls your nervous system, it controls your hormonal system. I didn't even know I had an endocrine system until they found the brain tumor and start talking to me about it. And then I start doing research. And so it's important, almost dire, that if you're in any kind of leadership capacity, that you educate yourself before you start labeling everything demonic and everything sinful and everything a spirit. Because what happens is, I said this earlier, and I'll say it until the cows come home. Some of this stuff that's mental illness, we're calling sin, and we're calling demonic, and we're calling spirit. But then the stuff that is sin, the stuff that is, spiritual, the stuff that is demonic, we let that slide. We let that go. We cover that. We celebrate that. We hide that. We rally around that stuff. And that's right there. That's the crazy part. People with mental illness are not crazy. It's like, that's why I cringe when I hear people talking about these mass shooters are suffering from mental illness. No, 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 no. People with mental illness, they don't sit down in the capacity to actually set out a plan for weeks and months and years at a time and then execute it. People with certain levels of mental illness, in fact, they would do all they can to stay away from crowds of people. These are just natural born killers that we're saying. I wish they would stop trying to label mental illness, put a mental illness label on everything that's sinful or everything that is demonic, but instead we're calling mental illness the sin nature, or the reason why people sin, or the cause that will, make people sin. None of that is true. I want you guys to get some education. So one of the first things that causes depression, biological differences. People with depression appear to have physical changes in their brains. That's what happened to me. I had two types of brain tumors. First type, they were only able to get 3/4 of it out. So guess what? I still have a fourth of it in there. So I still have to deal with that. I still have to be on treatment for it. I still have to deal with everything that comes along with it. It's just not such to a degree that it was when it was a full mass there. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? So the second thing is brain chemistry. Uh, Neurotransmitters, listen to this, are naturally occurring brain chemicals that likely play a role in depression. Recent research indicates that changes in the function and effect of these neurotransmitters and how they interact with our neural circuits involved in maintaining our mood stability may play a significant role in depression and its treatment. Here again, no mention of it being a spirit, no mention of it being demonic. Here now we're talking about the brain chemistry. First, we talked about the biological differences, how the brain changes physical shape over time. Now we're talking about brain chemistry, and this has to do with the neurotransmitters and how the brain transmit and how our neural circuits. Anytime you see neuro in front of anything, that's talking about the brain. Okay, so neuro and brain, those words should be interchangeable. So now when you say neurotransmitters, you can say brain transmitters. When you see neural circuits, you can say brain circuits, because neuro is indicative that we're talking about the brain. All right. And so the next thing is your hormones. Changes in the body's balance of hormones may be involved in causing, watch this, or triggering depression. Again, your endocrine system controls your entire hormonal system. I had no idea why I would have these highs and lows like I was having. I just thought, something was incredibly wrong with me. And the way they found the tumor was because I had a stroke. And, once and I had a stroke while I was asleep, and so uh, I heard somebody say, Benita, get up, you're having a stroke. Well, when I woke up, there was nobody there. So I went back to sleep. So the second time, my bed started shaking. My bed was just shaking, 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 shaking. So, and I heard somebody say, Benita, get up, get to the hospital. You're having a stroke. So I get up. This time, I don't see anybody. But when I look at the foot of my bed, I see this silhouette of a man standing there shaking my bed, telling me, get up, get up, get up. You're having a stroke. All right. So I finally get up. And it's like this man is telling me what to do. He was like, get dressed. So I get dressed. And so I called my son. I said, hey, can y'all come take me to the hospital? I think I'm having a stroke. So my son and his girlfriend, they rush over, come and get me. They take me to the hospital. I walk into the emergency room. And one of the first things they asked me, and they said, well, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm here because I think I'm having a stroke. And so the triage nurse was like, you think you're having a stroke? I was like, yes, I think I'm having a stroke. She says, well, smile for me. So I smiled. She says, okay, lift your arms. So in my mind, when she said lift your arms, I lift both the arms. Next thing I know, she's rushing me. She brings a wheelchair. Somebody comes a wheelchair. She calls stat this. And I'm standing there like, what's going on? You know, and next thing I know, I'm in the bag. They hooking stuff up to me. They, opening up my clothes. I'm like, what's going on? She says, well, Miss Bradley, were you not aware that when I told you to lift your arms, you only lifted one arm? And I'm thinking, no, I didn't. I lift both of my arms. What are you talking about? Well, not knowing. And then she said, I smiled. I was only able to smile with half of my face. I'm just like, no, I didn't realize. I didn't even realize that my left leg was kind of dragging a little bit. I didn't realize that while I was getting dressed, I had lost the use of my left arm. None of that phase, I didn't realize any of that until I got to the hospital. And then she was telling me, she was like, Miss Bradley, how did you just walk in here? I said, I don't know. I just got out the car and walked in here to see a doctor. She said, but they got me in the back and they was doing all this work. So my blood pressure was like 220 over, no, it was 240 over 112, 114, something like that. So she says, how did you just walk in here? I was like, well, I was asleep and something was shaking my bed and told me to wake up and come to the hospital because I was having a stroke in my sleep. And I said, so I got dressed and came to the hospital. I said, and I walked in here to tell you guys I need to see a doctor. And so I stayed in the hospital just about a week. I had to do physical therapy. I had to do speech therapy. I had to do occupational therapy. I had to learn how to use my left arm all over again. I had to walk. They had to strap me to a walker. I had to learn how to do all of that stuff. And I still didn't realize how much damage it had done to my brain until I got released. And then I went to speech therapy and all of that. And the lady was like, can you say your ABCs? I was like, honey, I got a legal degree. I'm not saying my ABCs for you. I know my ABCs. She was like, well, Miss Bradley, we have to have you to do all this to see the extent of the damage that the stroke caused. And that's when they told me, well, when we were testing you, we found you had a brain tumor, this, that, and the third. So I'm just like, Lord, after all I've been through now, this, you know, and so sometimes there can be changes in the way the brain transmit, and it can be changes in the way our brain not just transmit, but the way our brain interprets information. It's almost like a car battery. Uh, that's not just connecting just right. Sometimes you have to get the jump off to make everything click just right so your car can start. So the brain is kind of like that. Sometimes things are not connecting right in the brain, and it causes you not to be able to get started, not to be able to do all the things you used to do, not to be able to understand what's actually going on with you. So in those instances, it's easy to slip into a state of depression because something's going on that's totally out of your control. It's like what cancer patients go through. Something's going on in their body that's totally out of their control. So it's easy for them to slip over into depression during their fight against cancer because, again, it's totally out of their control. And anybody that's of any age and anybody that's of any mindset or any little bit of intelligence, you don't want anything to take over your body so much so to where you're no longer in control of your own body. You see what I'm saying? And so what happens is we want to always be in control. All right. Let me give you two more and then we're going to be done for the day. So hormones, changes in your body's balance of hormones may be involved in causing or triggering depression. Hormone changes can result with pregnancy and during the weeks or months after delivery, postpartum, and from thyroid problems, menopause, and a number of other conditions. Okay? Inherited traits is the last one I want to give you for the day. Depression is more common in people whose blood relatives also have this condition. Researchers are trying to find genes that may be involved in causing depression. And so, again, out of all of those causes, not once do we run into anything spiritual. Not once do we run into anything that carries a negative connotation. So if you're listening to me, or if you'll hear me later on, if you are suffering with depression or anxiety, if you're having thoughts of suicide, don't be ashamed. You're not the only one. You're not alone. I promise you. If it can hit me, it can hit anybody. And listen, God don't love me any more than he loves the next person. He doesn't love me any better. He doesn't love you any less, than he loves the next person. Listen, God loves us all. I don't care what people tell you. God loves us all, and he wants us to be well. I want you to be well. I want you to be able to experience the good part of life. Once we go through all these battles and these highs and lows and these crying nights and these restless nights, I want us to be able to enjoy some degree of life. I want us to have a quality of life that's beneficial to us. Okay. So let me give you these numbers. So if you're struggling, you need somebody to talk to, you can't really find anybody to talk to, there's a national prevention lifeline. Let me give you that number because I promise you, it's a whole lot of people dealing with depression. It's a whole lot of people that have depression symptoms, but will not go to the doctor. They will not go get an assessment. They will not go get a diagnosis. They will not go get a treatment. But as soon as you start talking about that you in therapy or you take medication, they got so much to say about you. Child, you better stop listening to people and go get the help that you need. If things happen to you during your childhood that you still struggling with when you 30, 40, and 50 and 60, baby, go get some help. Don't stop. Let me tell you something about church people. I can talk about church people because I've been in church all my life. Church people will have you all tied up, all tangled up, all mixed up, and all jacked up. And then they'll tell you, just praise your way through it. First of all, how am I supposed to praise my way through it when I don't even know where it is? I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm just supposed to act like everything is okay. I'm just supposed to come in here, jump and shout, and then I go home. I can go join the gym to do all of that. That's an exercise in futility. And I'm not giving an indictment against the church. I'm not giving an indictment against preachers. I'm just talking about what I know. I'm talking about what's real. We've got to do better in the Black church. If we're going to see the results that we need to see, we have got to do better about how we deal with depression and anxiety and talking about thoughts of suicide in the Black church. If we don't, we're going to keep seeing these numbers of suicide, these numbers of depression. We're going to keep seeing all these scandals keep rising and rising and rising. And so then what happens is, then we'll say, then people have a legitimate reason to say, see, that's why I don't go to church no more. They have a legit, I don't get offended as a pastor when people tell me, oh, pastor, I don't go to church no more. I don't deal with church people. I talk to you, but I don't deal with church people. I don't get offended by that, because sometimes I can see the legitimacy of their complaint. I can see the legitimacy of their concerns, because a lot of times we are not knowledgeable enough on how to deal with people that deal with mental illness. Because the first thing we'll call the spirit, want to get some oil. Baby, you can't oil everybody down. You can't pray everything away. You can't preach everything away. You can't praise break everything away. You can't tell folk to run around the wall 7 times, everything gonna fall flat. We need to stop all of that. All of that is superficial, and it's become theatrical. That's in my opinion. I can give my opinion. I've been a pastor since 1997. I have seen it all, honey. And let me tell you something. We're going to have to do better. What we need is reformation. What we need is restoration. What we need is education. And so when we get all of that, then we can start dealing with people that are dealing with issues that don't have nothing to do with the church. Some of this stuff is just stuff that people had to deal with in their childhood, and they never had the freedom to talk about it. They never had the freedom to say, you know what, it's okay not to be okay. Because we'll tell people, oh, don't say you're not okay. Don't claim that. Honey, I'm not claiming anything. It is what it is. If if you bump your elbow on something, they call it a funny bone, but it ain't ever funny to me when I hit mine. If you bump your elbow on something and you say, oh, that hurt, honey, that ain't claiming nothing. That thing hurt. Bump your toe on something. Honey, your soul will feel it. So then you got to determine, you got to decide, am I going to call Jesus, or am I going to say this other word that's almost, it's just rolling around on the tip of my tongue. But I'm trying to think, what would Jesus do? But the way I hit my toe, Jesus ain't coming to mind right now. So that ain't claiming nothing. Your whole soul hurt when you hit your toe on something. When you hit that especially that, I don't know which hurt worse, the big toe or the little toe. But baby, especially when you bump it like on the rails of your bed, child, honey, I don't know if Jesus always come to my mind first. I'm just gonna tell you about me. He be on my mind, but sometimes that ain't the first thing come out my mouth. Okay, can I just be honest with you, honey? That's a reality, and so we got to stop pretending. My daughter walked by and said, "Amen." We got to stop pretending like stuff don't happen to Black people in the Black church. My cousin said earlier, and she was right. When we was growing up, they said, "Oh, Black people don't deal with depression. Black people don't talk about depression. Church people don't talk about depression. Church people can't get depressed. If you save, you can't get depressed. You got the Holy Ghost, you can't get depressed. If you in the church, you don't deal with depression because depression is a spirit." I wish the church would get educated. All right. All right. So here are some numbers. If you're dealing with any form of depression, you're feeling suicidal, the National Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. And if you are a veteran and you find yourself in crisis, you're going to dial the same number, 1-800-273-8255, but you're going to press option 1. Tell them you're a veteran. They will find you someone in your area for you to talk to. They will find you somewhere to go, somewhere to get help, somebody to immediately connect you with so you can get help. Again, the National Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. If you are a veteran, 1-800-273-8255, press option 1. If you are a resident of Georgia, if you are a resident in the state of Georgia, the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, this is 24/7 access, is 1-800-715-4225. Again, the number for all of Georgia, it's a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week call-in line. They will get you the help you need. It's 1-800-715-4225. If you know the specific hotline in your state, inbox me, let me know. I keep asking for these numbers. I keep asking for information. And for whatever reason, Black people don't respond to this kind of information. They don't respond to this kind of clarion call. We don't respond until somebody's put prophecy on top of their video, or, in a cash app thing. Then we respond to that. And all the while, you got people needing healing. You got people need counseling. And some of y'all need to get out these prayer lines and go see your therapist. That's how you're going to get your healing. Yes, I said it. Some of you need to get out these prayer lines and go see your therapist. All right? And I'm done. All right. So until next time, thank you for tuning in. And you have been watching What's on Your Mind. I am your host, Benita, and I will probably see you guys Saturday. All right? Bye-bye.